This hour of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by my good friends at Advantage Gold. Advantage Gold is a 5-star rated gold company with one-of-a-kind customer service. And when it comes to gold and precious metals, Advantage Gold is the only company I'll work with. Call Advantage Gold today and make sure you let them know that Mark Levin sent you. And now, let's begin.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
It's Larry O'Connor sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, today on this beautiful Friday in the United States of America. What a great country we're in, despite its troubles. Despite our concerns, despite the reality that we are led by absolute incoherent imbeciles at best and evil destructive forces at worst, we are still the greatest country on the planet. And we got to do what we can, my friends, my fellow patriots, to stick together and fix this thing. We still have the tools at our disposal, and we're going to do that. We're going to do that together. We're going to have a great conversation all evening long together, you and I. And if you're on the West Coast in my, formerly sort of adopted hometown of Los Angeles on the great KRLA, or up in San Francisco, or anywhere else around the world on whatever app you're streaming on, join us and be a part of what we're doing here. We're going to have a fantastic conversation over the next 3 hours and maybe actually not fix everything, but at least shine some light on what's wrong. By the way, by way of introduction, I am the morning show host on WMAL in Washington, D.C. That's it's really the morning show that Mark Levin listens to, if he's awake that early. I think he is. I know his beautiful wife, Julie, is awake that early, because sometimes she'll text me during the show. Usually when I get something wrong. You can listen to the morning show anytime from 5 to 9 in the morning. Eastern time. Just look for WMAL on whatever streaming app if you don't live in the Washington area. By the way, this Saturday, Life, Liberty, and Levin on Fox News Channel 8 Eastern. Mark's going to be joined by Stanley Kurtz and John Spencer. And then on Sunday, 8 p.m., Life, Liberty, and Levin will be the mighty Brent Bozell and Fox News' Pete Hegseth. So that's a great weekend lineup for you to settle into. Listen, I've got a lot to say about what this administration is doing with our ally Israel and the people of Israel and the great world leader Benjamin Netanyahu and the betrayal that this president is leading our nation into, the absolute shame of the 21st century. We should be ashamed as a nation that this man and his apparatus of Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan and whoever is really pulling the strings for this administration, because Lord knows this incoherent, incompetent puppet can't be making any decisions, because it appears as though he can barely walk across the South Lawn under his own power. We should be absolutely ashamed of what they are doing in our name. We are going to get to that. And this guy, Jose Andres, this restaurateur, this celebrity chef, who I believe is up for a sainthood at this point. The hagiographies that are being written about this self-aggrandizing, narcissistic, megalomaniac is absolute. I've had it up to here with how, well, we can't say anything bad. Even people who are gently criticizing Jose Andres, he's the guy who runs this nonprofit. It's sort of like Doctors Without Borders, but it's for chefs and food to feed people. And the cause I'm not going to criticize, but the man and the real hidden agenda behind the cause, you bet your butt I'm going to. I'm tired of it. I'm sick and tired of this Jose Andres being, who does he think he is? Oprah, that you can't criticize him? What he said yesterday about what happened in Israel. And the idea that this guy is actually apparently driving the agenda now for the Democrats and the Biden administration, it's going to stop, and it's going to stop tonight. We're going to tell you the truth about him and about his organization, the dirty little secret that went on there about a year ago. You know, they were making headlines about a year ago for all the wrong reasons. Can you say Harvey Weinstein? Yeah, we're going to tell you all about that. And now suddenly, oh, he's a saint. And the organization it's like Mother Teresa and the nuns. And we can't say anything bad. Even the people, as I was about to say, who are gently criticizing him, they then like twist themselves into a pretzel saying, oh, but the organization is fantastic. The World Central Kitchen. I wouldn't dare say anything. Well, yeah, I'll say something about the organization and what they've done and the lies that this man has been spreading. This chef who charges $300 a meal in Washington, D.C. for a microscopic portion of food. You betcha I will. And we will. We will get into all of that. But first, earlier today, Joe Biden, after only 11 days after the disaster in Baltimore Harbor, the man-made disaster in Baltimore Harbor, which saw the historic Francis Scott Key Bridge crumbling before our very eyes. After only 11 days, Joe Biden found his way to the shoreline with a beautiful political backdrop. He didn't find his way to East Palestine, Ohio for an entire year. Ohio, of course, no longer a swing state. They just keep voting MAGA, so why do we bother going out there? And also the backdrop. I mean, it's just a bunch of rural hicks, right? I mean, here I can stand in a harbor surrounded by nothing but elected Democrats. You see, if you went to East Palestine, Ohio to do a photo op, Photoshop is more like it because you sort of had to cut and paste this decrepit old man into the picture to make it look semi-legible. If he goes to Ohio for the photo op, he's going to be surrounded by, well, a Republican governor and Republican congressman and a Republican senator. He's going to have to stand next to that icky MAGA man, J.D. Vance. We don't want that. No. I'll wait until there's a disaster in Baltimore. So I've got a Democrat governor and 2 Democrat senators and Democrat congressmen and a beautiful broken bridge behind me. That's the photo op. That's the money shot we want. So 11 days after the disaster, he makes the 35-mile trek up to Baltimore Harbor. And I got to tell you, when you talk about presidential statements, you talk about words that stir a nation and inspire a people for generations. We have don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. We've got December 7th, a day that will live in infamy. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. I know those are 2 speeches that I can join together, but it was the same president. We have Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. And today, from Joseph Robinette Biden, we got this.
Today, my administration is announcing the first tranche of dislocated worker grants, fancy phrase, which is dimes. All it is there to make sure it helps create jobs for workers involved in the cleanup of this incident. Additional jobs.
I mean, I don't know about you, but it brings a tear to the eye. This is what they're going to carve on his monument, the memorial to Joe Biden, which I believe it'll resemble an outhouse on the National Mall. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. If only I had any inkling or understanding what in the hell this man is trying to say.
Today, my administration is announcing the first tranche of dislocated worker grants, fancy phrase, which is dimes. All it is there to make sure it helps create jobs for workers involved in the cleanup.
This man is literally standing there reading. I mean, it's not even like he's having to come up with this off the top of his head, like you do every day when you have a conversation at your workplace or business, or even interact with a human being and just say what's on your mind or what you need to communicate to your fellow human being. It's not like he needs to actually remember anything or come up with anything creative, original, or interesting. He's reading what they put in front of him.
Today, my administration is announcing the first tranche of dislocated worker grants, fancy phrase, which is dimes. All it is there to make sure it helps create jobs for workers involved in the cleanup.
Oh, he's got a stutter. Oh, it's a stutter. Don't make fun of him. It's just a stutter. It's a lifelong stutter. He's always had a stutter. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a stutter.
It's not the same, but I know a little bit about what it's like to lose a piece of your soul, to get that phone call in the middle of the night.
Stop
say
it.
Family members of God, I've been there.
No, don't.
It's feeling like having a black hole in your chest.
Oh, no.
Like you're being sucked in, unable to breathe.
I can't believe he's doing
the
this.
Anger, the pain, The depth of the loss is so profound.
I would love to say that this whole depth of loss is so profound, the hole in your heart when you get that phone call in the middle of the night about a lost loved one. I would love to tell you that he's talking about the phone call that those Gold Star moms and dads got when they found out that their child was one of the 13 lost service members in Afghanistan due to this man's incompetence and narcissism and ego in his haphazard withdrawal from Afghanistan that then became such a disaster that he turned planes around in midair, sent back another couple thousand troops to handle things. But we relied on the Taliban to make sure that the airport was secure. And then when a suicide bomber was spotted by a sniper, he was told by his superior officers, due to the White House's rules of engagement, that he could not intervene, and therefore those 13 service members, those Americans, were dead. I wish he was talking about the loss that those Gold Star parents felt due to his incompetence in his policies. But no, he's talking about the loved ones of those who died in the bridge collapse, and he's equating it back to the loss of his own son, because the man can't do anything without making it about himself.
And we know it's hard to believe. You're probably not going to believe me, but I can tell you now from personal experience, the day is going to come when the memory of your loved one as you walk by that park or the church or something that you shared together is going to bring a smile to your lips before it brings a tear to your eye. It's going to happen. It's going to take a while, but I promise you it will happen. And that's when you know you're going to be able to make it.
I preferred when I couldn't understand him. I preferred when he's completely incomprehensible and mumbling his way through multisyllabic words. When he sounded, as my father used to tell me I sounded at the dinner table if I was mumbling, he would say, "Larry, you sound like a poop salesman with his mouth full of samples." Although my father, Dennis O'Connor Sr., who is not known to mince words, did not use the word poop. You won't be surprised to learn. And as if all of that wasn't embarrassing enough for us as an American people at a time like this, when he was exploiting the disaster in Baltimore Harbor and the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge for his own political purposes to make it all about himself, he then said this.
Somebody can tell you within hours of the Maryland request, we approved $60 million in emergency federal funding. I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it.
Wait. Hold on a second. He fully intend. Well, first of all, he needs to read the Constitution, because it's not up to him to decide how money is spent. It's up to Congress. I fully intend to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it. Well, I mean, considering the fact that it was collapsed due to some kind of engineering fault, or the fact that an earthquake. I understand we just got another earthquake in the New York, New Jersey area just right before we went on the air. The earthquake caused it. It was an act of God, right? So that makes sense that we would do this. Or it was destroyed in an act of terrorism or something. So, of course, the federal government would pay for that. Oh, no, wait a minute. That's not what happened here at all. In fact, we don't have the full investigation complete yet. We're 11 days into this. We found out that there's 2 minutes of missing data from the ship's so-called black box. God knows why that is. They're not even scratching the surface on the investigation as to what caused this. And already this guy is out there handing Maryland your money to build this thing in full, the entire thing, all of it.
Somebody can tell you within hours of the Maryland request, we approved $60 million in emergency federal funding. I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it.
Hey, Chuckles, it's not your money. And, you know, it's kind of a far cry from what he said in East Palestine, Ohio. When he finally went to East Palestine, Ohio, after a year, not 11 days, after a year, remember what he was saying? That he was singing a different tune in East Palestine, Ohio.
Let me be clear. While there are acts of God, this was an act of greed that was 100% preventable. Let me say it again. An act of greed that was 100% preventable. We were pushing the railroads to take more precautions, to deal with braking, to deal with a whole range of things. that were not dealt with. Norfolk Southern failed its responsibility. We know multi-million-dollar railroad companies transporting toxic chemicals have a responsibility to do it safely. And again, Norfolk Southern failed. My administration was on the ground within hours, working closely with the governor of the...
No, they weren't. Norfolk Southern. They're going to pay for all this. They're going to pay for the whole cleanup. They're going to do everything because it's all there for it. Fault. Norfolk Southern. Why isn't he even mentioning the name of this international Asian and European conglomerate that owns this ship? Why isn't he saying this was an act of greed? Why isn't he asking why this ship was back on the sea again, even though last year it had another accident in another port? Why suddenly are we not saying anything about the shipping company? And we're like, yeah, we'll pay for it all. I'll make sure we pay for it all. Really? Oh, I've got more to say about this, and you've got more to hear, but I want to hear from you too. 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
Our once mighty dollar's under siege from runaway inflation. For those still working, your paychecks buy less while costs for gas, food, cars, utilities skyrocket thanks to inflation. That's why I'm urging all my listeners to register for the upcoming Gold and Silver Summit hosted by our friends at Advantage Gold. It's a fantastic seminar. They'll teach you how to take steps to help guard your wealth from inflation using asset diversification into physical precious metals. Gold and silver hold intrinsic value that should remain untouched by government manipulation. Folks, don't wait for the Fed's reckless policies to completely devalue the dollar and steal your life savings. Call now while free registration is open. I'm telling you, this is a fantastic seminar. Call 800-900-8000 right now. The Gold and Silver Summit could provide the vital insights we need to protect our families. 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Always consult your financial and tax professionals.
I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it.
Joe Biden earlier today playing fast and loose with your money. After all, we got plenty of it. That's another, $1 billion we just print. That won't affect inflation at all. But earlier this year, when he finally visited East Palestine, Ohio, he was singing a different tune, wasn't he?
Let me be clear. While there are acts of God, this was an act of greed that was 100% preventable. Let me say it again. An act of greed that was 100% preventable. We were pushing the railroads to take more precautions, to deal with braking, to deal with a whole range of things.
But he went on to say Norfolk Southern will pay for all this. Not one penny will be paid with government tax dollars. Norfolk Southern. Notice how he hasn't even said the name of the company that owns the ship. It's Grace Ocean Private Limited and Synergy Marine. They're based in Singapore. Last I checked, it's a private company, by the way, no public investors. Last I checked, an international shipping firm that is 100% owned privately without any public investment. They've got some pretty deep pockets. Remember Aristotle Onassis? Yeah, he was a shipping magnate. I assure you this company has a lot of money. So why aren't we asking them to pay for this? Why are we immediately deciding we're going to pay for it ourselves? I'll answer some of those questions coming up in just a moment.
Attention, fellow Americans. Mark Levin here with a warning and a solution. I feel like our country's being destroyed by out-of-control spending and debt thanks to Biden and the American Marxists. And your hard-earned savings and retirement could be at risk from their socialist schemes. That's why you should consider Advantage Gold, the best of the best, a U.S.-based company that specializes in helping everyday Americans protect their wealth. They have a simple solution to help you even potentially grow your wealth despite the attacks from Washington. I urge you to register for their upcoming Gold and Silver Summit. It's fabulous. A free online event where you'll learn tips to help safeguard your finances by diversifying into physical precious metals. Call 800-900-8000. Call them right now to sign up securely for this pivotal summit. It is crucial. Tell them Mark Levin sent you for a special bonus. Call 800-900-8000 right now. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
The Mark Levin Show is tomorrow's morning show. You can reach Mark now at 877-381-3811.
I do love that one. Did you play that one for me? Mark Levin Show is tomorrow's morning show. Let me tell you something. I am tomorrow's morning show, the O'Connor and Company show in Washington, D.C. It's America's morning show. And I do not listen. I know everyone listens to Mark Levin for show prep. But I am asleep by the time he comes on the air. That's the reality about a morning show host. But everybody else does, actually follow Mark's lead. It's Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin here, 877-381-3811. Lines are jammed, but if you want to try to get in, just hang there for a second. I've got plenty to say about the disastrous administration and what they're doing to our friends Israel, our family, the nation of Israel. And I've got plenty to say about this sanctimonious jerk, Jose Andres, who is trying to he's trying to win a Nobel Prize, is what he's trying to do, on the corpses of his volunteers who died in that accidental strike. I'm going to get to plenty. I feel like I'm the only one who will actually say anything bad about this guy. But I will, trust me. But I want to talk about this bridge, and I know you do too. Because all of a sudden, we've got President Chuckles there barely mumbling through his prepared remarks and speaking through, well, yeah, it's a stutter. It's a stutter. That's why you can't understand anything he's saying. And he said,
I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it.
It's funny about this bridge. We've all seen exactly what happened. We've all seen the video. It's phenomenal that there was a security camera that fixed exactly on the moment where this happened. We know what happened. We don't know why it happened yet, but we know what happened. What happened is this giant cargo ship leaving the harbor lost power, lost control of the ship, and when they were finally able to regain it, it was too late. It hit the pylon of the bridge, and the entire bridge came down. Everyone knows what happened. So now there's wrangling about who's responsible. And there'll be a lot of questions about it. Was it human error? Was the captain responsible for this? I don't know. But boy, what he's saying here about federal tax dollars, it's a lot different than what he was saying in East Palestine about the train wreck, where he insisted that only the company Norfolk Southern would pay for everything, not one thin dime of tax dollars.
We were pushing the railroads to take more precautions, to deal with braking, to deal with a whole range of things that were not dealt with. Norfolk Southern failed its responsibility. We know multi-million-dollar railroad companies transporting toxic chemicals have responsibility.
Oh, here, listen to the rhetoric, the class warfare rhetoric. Multi-million-dollar train companies. How about billion-dollar shipping companies there, pal? Today's New York Times, who will pay for the Baltimore bridge collapse? Disputes over liability and the cost of claims could take years for insurers to resolve and results in billions of dollars in payouts. A lot of people are going to start pointing fingers. Hey, it was just a, mechanical failure. Really? Well, who's responsible for making sure that the ship is mechanically sound? The bridge has been there for 50 years, and this has never happened before. Somehow, all of the other ships and the other shipping companies have been able to make their way out without having this kind of failure and without having this kind of catastrophe. It could be the captain's fault. It could be the shipping company's fault. It could be sabotage. I'll tell you who's not responsible. There's going to be a lot of people pointing fingers about who's responsible for the collapse of the bridge and who should be held liable. But I know one thing 100% for certain, unequivocally, this is infallible truth handed down from high above. Guess who's not responsible? You're not responsible. You're not responsible. You shouldn't have to pay for it. Or more appropriately, the way this guy spends, and his pal Chuck Schumer and the Congress spends, you shouldn't pay for it, neither should your children or your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren. But that's what he just promised today. Without one pause, without one question, without naming the shipping company, without even saying, hey, maybe we should find out what happened.
I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge.
And I know Republicans in the House right now are thinking, well, no one wants to be on the wrong side of rebuilding the bridge. Obviously, we got to rebuild the bridge. If we come out and criticize them or oppose that, we're going to look like the bid. No! For God's sake, learn how to make an argument. Learn how to actually state your case. Speaker Johnson, I hope you've got staff listening. I hope, who's Jason Smith, the Ways and Means Committee chairman, is fantastic congressman from Missouri. I hope he's listening. This isn't hard, guys. This isn't hard. Get yourself in front of a camera and say, we agree with the president that bridge needs to be built, but why are we committing federal tax dollars to this project when Grace Ocean Private Limited and Synergy Marine, based out of Singapore, probably with some private Chinese investment, is obviously responsible, and they obviously have deep pockets. They obviously have insurance, and why in the hell are we not naming them? Calling that, have you seen one representative from this shipping company have to answer one question from one reporter? They're all in hiding. The legal wrangling began this week, says the New York Times, when the ship owner Grace Ocean Private Limited and the ship manager Synergy Marine, both based in Singapore, filed a petition in U.S. District Court. Have we filed any petitions yet in court? Has the federal government filed any kind of petitions against the shipping company? Why are they beating us to the punch? Oh, they got their lawyers all set, don't they? U.S. District Court to limit their liability to $43.7 million. It's going to be over $1 billion. You know that. They're trying to limit their liability to $43.7 million. They cited an 1851 law. Yeah, they're referencing a law from before the Civil War that allows a ship owner to cap financial damages, mostly to the value of a ship after a crash, if the owner is determined not to have been at fault. Well, maybe we need to determine that the owner is at fault. Claims against the ship's owners and manager must be filed by the federal court in Baltimore by September 24th, the judge said. Investigators are still determining what caused such a catastrophic failure on the cargo ship, the Dolly, why the massive vessel appeared to lose power and propulsion before hitting the bridge, and whether negligence was involved. Guys, even if negligence wasn't involved, they're the ones responsible for this. And yet you've got this guy coming out here already committing, without question, without debate, without discussion, we're going to pay for all of it. But he's really fast to demonize greedy corporations as soon as it serves his purposes. But why is this Asian-based shipping company untouchable? And by the way, to ensure that they are held liable for all of the expense of this accident that they single-handedly caused, it would require a full, in-depth investigation with complete and total transparency. And why do I get the feeling we're not going to get that? Why do I get that feeling? And this is a shipping company, and this ship itself, this specific ship, was involved in another harbor accident a year ago down in South America. And yet, Mr. Blame the greedy corporations when it's a freight train company in Ohio. Mr. Blame Elon Musk, blame X, blame anybody that he can find a finger to point to. He won't even say the name of this shipping company. He doesn't even mention, no one's mentioning this company. All they're saying is he's really generous with your money. He's he gets all that. And by the way, yeah, that's my other favorite part of this. As he commits your money, your children's money, your grandchildren's money.
I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it. As we've done in other parts of the country.
You hear that applause? They're applauding him. He said that so he could get applause. He gets applause for committing your money when it shouldn't actually be committed. I assure you, if you were driving a car or a truck and you ran into a structure owned by the government and it collapsed, I'm pretty sure you and your insurance company would be on the hook. I'm pretty damn sure they'd be coming after you. Have you even heard the name of this company? Do you know who owns it? Do you know the name of any person associated with it or connected to it? I know a lot of people are saying Mitch McConnell's family is, the Chow family is something. That's not true. I've looked into it. They are involved with a shipping company out of China. This is a different company. I mean, listen, I shouldn't say unequivocally it's not true. Based on all of the known evidence at this time, it's not true. But it is a privately held company, so there are private investors, and you never know. But it's not public knowledge at this point. But it's just remarkable to me that this guy, for political purposes, can go up there and commit your money and get all the applause and all the accolades. And no one's even mentioning who's actually obviously responsible for this. All right, let's go to L in Maryland. You're right there. You're right in the shadow of this, L. You're first up here on the Mark Levin Show. I'm Larry O'Connor.
Hi, Larry, the great one, Junior. How are you?
Hardly, but I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, okay, so I have the answer for you,
Okay.
and regrettably, it's because I experienced it firsthand. I'm going to connect the dots for you. The bridge, COVID, this eclipse nonsense coming up. When they can declare a state of emergency, the floodgates to the dollars open, and they can funnel the money back to their friends, contractors. But then I'm sure there are backroom deals going on, too. My husband was doing a PPE deal during COVID with Maryland. And Hogan, I'm guessing, shut down the bidding because it was quote-unquote emergency and gave it to his buddy Michael Steele. I mean, we were talking numbers and everything. So this is what they do. This is like a really slick thing. So California wants to get reparations. They'll just declare an emergency on something else.
Al, listen, you are right that the push to get the federal government in the middle of this thing and start doling out the money is 100%. It's going to go to all of their friends. And this probably will be a cut through the red tape, forget about all of the... And they have to, by the way. I'm okay with them cutting through the red tape. That's what you mentioned, California. During the Northridge earthquake in the 90s, there was nobody thought that they could get the freeway overpasses up, the Santa Monica Freeway and the Simi Valley Freeway, but they got it done within 90 days. It's because you had a Republican governor, Pete Wilson, you had a Republican mayor, Michael Reardon, and they were able to cut through the red tape and incentivize the contractors to get it done. But when that happens, oftentimes, especially when Democrats are involved in a corrupt state like Maryland, you're right. It's all going to go to political apparatchiks. It's going to go to cronies. I don't see how the solar eclipse factors into this, though. I would love to blame that on the evil Marxist Democrats as well, but I'm pretty sure this is just a cyclical thing where the moon is passing between the Earth and the sun. Unless you know something I don't know.
Yes, they're declaring a state of emergency for it. So that's what's happening.
Wait, who they?
Their contractors.
Who's declaring a state of emergency? Which they?
Aren't several states have already put emergencies into effect?
You know what? If they are, it's just because their expressways are going to be... Oh, yeah, I am seeing it now. You are seeing. I think it's just because their expressways and highways are going to be overloaded with people. But there shouldn't be any damage caused by the solar eclipse. But thank you, Al. Great stuff. And I don't doubt it about the PPE stuff. I know Hogan was involved in some stuff with the testing kits as well in Maryland. All right, we'll get more of your calls in a minute. Larry in Pennsylvania, James in Washington, Gil in Georgia, Nancy in Philadelphia. Oh, it's the law here on the Mark Levin Show. Somebody calls from Philadelphia. You have to take the call. He's such an Eagles fan. We'll get to all of you in a minute. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the great one, Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
My fellow Americans, we're living in very perilous economic times. Washington seems determined to bankrupt our nation with endless stimulus spending. As they devalue our dollar, hard-working Americans like you could lose everything. That's why I urge you strongly, register for the upcoming Gold and Silver Summit hosted by our friends at Advantage Gold. They'll teach you how to help guard your wealth using asset diversification into physical precious metals. Gold and silver can offer a defense against the dollar's devaluation, and the experts experts at Advantage Gold will explain how you can convert some of your savings into precious metals that can protect and potentially grow your wealth. With currency debasement from Washington and global uncertainty on the rise, gold and silver diversification can offer you some stability. Call 800-900-8000 right now to sign up. 800-900-8000 now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
It's Larry O'Connor sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, 877-381-3811, wrapping up our conversation about Joe Biden just as tossing your money to build the bridge, committed it, all of it, without any, nary a word, nary a mention of the shipping company that's actually responsible. By the way, let's not forget, he also said this.
Biden administration is announcing the first tranche of dislocated worker grants, fancy phrase, which is dimes, all it is there to make sure it helps create jobs for workers.
Yeah, and on this, you can't argue with the man. I mean, honestly, what do you say in response to that? It's just, I think the truth and the power are in his words, and that's all you need to hear from Joe Biden today. James in Washington. Hey, James, thanks for calling in. You're on the Mark Levin Show. I'm Larry O'Connor.
Oh boy, thanks for taking my call. I've never called into any of these, so this is a treat.
Well, it's an honor for us. Now,
Thank
don't
you.
blow it.
I won't, sir. No,
Kidding.
The last few years when I've been watching this guy, he's afraid. He's afraid of the cabal that's just behind him. These ideals have been perpetrated by the universities, the communist, pseudo-communist universities. They've been disseminated by the media, and now he just can't say anything. You know, if this was Walmart or some big American company, he'd be blasting them, but it's from a developing nation, and he's not going to talk to them about that.
Maybe. I mean, that might be part of it, James, but I'll assure you, thanks for the call. I assure you did great, by the way. Do it again. Singapore's not developing. Singapore's just developed just fine. This isn't some third world poverty case. There's something else going on here. There's something else going on, how there's nary a mention of this giant shipping. Again, can I reiterate, shipping conglomerate? You know, the Aristotle Onassis, the richest man in the world back in the 60s, when the widow of John Kennedy, Jackie Kennedy, that suddenly became Jackie O because she married the richest man on the planet, and he was in the shipping business. They're called tycoons. Endless amounts of money these companies have, and yet there's not even a mention. Not even a mention. It's amazing, isn't it? Gil in Georgia. Gil, thanks for calling in. You're on the Mark Levin Show.
Hi, it's Daryl.
Daryl, I'm sorry.
However,
thank you for correcting the record. My name's Larry. This is my brother Daryl, and this is my other brother Daryl. How about that? We did it, Daryl. I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that ever.
Yeah, well, I'm Larry, so me too. Trust me, I hear it all the time.
Yeah, we need to find another Daryl then. You brought up a point about the federal government usually steps in and pays for natural disasters and terrorist attacks. And, you know, we have East Palestine and we have Baltimore, but it seems like Hawaii has just been forgotten about.
The fire.
The damage there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I heard someplace that the residents got paid $700 each, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
So,
you're right, Larry. Why don't we hear about that? And you know, it brings up another thing. Whole lot of disasters happening with this guy in the White House. Remember how relatively quiet and serene things were from 2017 to 2021? I mean, other than Twitter and CNN, but other than that, not many disasters. All right, coming up, Joe Biden throws Israel under the bus.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
This is Larry O'Connor. I'm sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, and I'm proud to do so, pleased to do so, honored to do so. It's honestly the most coveted microphone in all of American talk radio. And since American talk radio is really sort of the only talk radio that anyone really cares about, because we invented this damn format and we're better at it than anyone else, and no one else has the kind of free speech and open airwaves that we have. Yeah. Oh man, I was in England and Ireland over this last summer, and I wanted to tune in to listen to what their talk radio oh Lord. If there was ever any doubt as to why we fought that war in 1776, if anything, it was for the talk radio. I have no doubt the founders had a vision of talk radio in the future. It is pathetic. I respectfully disagree with the good gentleman's opinion. In fact, and honestly, there's no such thing as right-wing talk radio. There's no such thing as conservative talk radio. It's Marxist talk radio and left-wing climate change embracing, but I'll call myself a conservative talk radio. It's just awful. So let me reiterate, this is not only the most coveted microphone in American talk radio, it's the most coveted microphone in the world in talk radio. And since talk radio is the only format that matters anymore in radio, it means this is the most coveted microphone in radio around the world. There, I said it. I said it. That's right, I said it. So it is an honor to sit in for the great one, Mark Levin. By the way, if you're missing your Mark Levin fix, and frankly, I am too, I'm more disappointed than anyone that he's not on tonight. You can catch him tomorrow night, the Saturday, April 6th edition of Life, Liberty, and Levin. It'll be Stanley Kurtz and John Spencer joining the great one. And then on Sunday at 8 p.m., you've got Pete Hegseth and the mighty Brent Bozell joining the great one, Mark Levin. And speaking of Brent Bozell, you know, Brent Bozell is an absolute, a giant, a legend. He founded the Media Research Center in the early days of the Rush Limbaugh program, when for the first time you actually heard somebody on any broadcast airwaves speaking and saying the things that you always were thinking in your head and felt in your heart. But finally, you now hear somebody on the radio almost saying exactly what you were thinking, right? That was the beauty of Mark Levin. Excuse me, of Rush Limbaugh, also of Mark Levin. And Rush, for the first time, he would start playing these audio sound bites from broadcast and cable news, right? He would have all these great audio sound bites, and he would tell you what they were saying, and he would sort of show you the left-wing media bias that you always knew was there. You always saw it. But again, here's Rush Limbaugh showing the world exactly what it is. And at that point, it was impossible to ignore. It was impossible to deny it. In fact, it sort of trained you at that point to listen for it and hear it when you were watching the network news, Peter Jennings at the time, or what have you. Well, those sound bites, all of the great information and all of the examples of left-wing media bias came from the amazing Brent Bozell and Media Research Center. And Brent will be on Life, Liberty, and Levin this weekend, Sunday, with Mark Levin. But I bring this up because I personally today benefited from the great work that Media Research Center continues to do. Nicholas Fondacaro is the associate editor for Media Research Center and Newsbusters. But go to their websites, bookmark them, follow these guys on social media, because they watch these shows all the time and they grab perfect examples of how the propaganda corporate-owned media is steering the narrative of political discourse in this country. And, you know, for those of you who don't know my backstory, before I became a radio host, I used to work in a different industry, but I met this guy in Los Angeles when I lived there. His name was Andrew Breitbart. It was 2009, and he changed my life. And he hired me to come and work for him and his fledgling websites, Big Hollywood, Big Government, Big Journalism. They ended up being merged in 2012 under the banner Breitbart News, which you now know, love, and read every day. And Andrew was, of course, a passionate fighter against the Democrat media complex, as he called it. These people who work in politics and then immediately find themselves working on the network news and then get a job in the government again, and they keep going back and forth, and they all work together hand in hand. Democrat media complex. That's why Ronna McDaniel, no champion to liberty and conservative principles, but even she was unacceptable in the little clubhouse there at NBC News. Jen Psaki, welcome with open arms. Chuck Todd, you used to work for a Democrat on the Hill? Absolutely. Come on over. Tim Russert used to work for Andrew Cuomo? Absolutely. Be our guest. George Stephanopoulos used to be the bag man for Bill Clinton. George Stephanopoulos' job was not only to lie to the media about what he called bimbo eruptions. You know what a bimbo eruption is? A bimbo eruption could also be called a credible claim of sexual misconduct by an innocent woman, a victim. But George Stephanopoulos, when he worked for the Clinton cartel, he called it a bimbo eruption. And part of his job was not just to lie about the bimbo eruptions and cover them up, but then he would lean on these journalists, these reporters who were trying to get the story, trying to get the truth, and he would bully them. He would intimidate them. He would say, you follow this story, you'll never work in this town again. You won't have any access to Bill Clinton. You'll be the laughingstock of all your friends. You won't be invited to any parties, and your career will be over. That was his job as the henchman for Bill Clinton. Now, he's the senior, most respected political journalist at ABC News. That's the Democrat media complex. And when I worked for Andrew Breitbart, and I was the editor of Breitbart TV, and I would write it at the big journalism part of the website about the media, there was a time when I was cranking out a lot of stories about MSNBC. Keith Olbermann said this, and Rachel Maddow said this, and, this and that. And he came up to me and he goes, Larry, your stuff is fine, but it's like MSNBC. I don't care about MSNBC, is what Andrew said. He used more colorful language, I promise you. I don't pet a duck about MSNBC. Let's just fill in the blanks. He said, no, you know what the problem is? The problem, and this was back in, 2010? 2011, he said, MSNBC is not the problem. We know who they are. They don't hide who they are. They tell you who they are every day. The problem is CNN. The real problem is CNN. The problem is Anderson Cooper. The problem is Wolf Blitzer, because they still pretend to have this veneer of objectivity. They pretend to be the real journalists. They pretend to be the ones that don't have a bias, that they don't take sides. They're the insidious ones. They're the ones who are the biggest problem that we've got. And so I could play for you a report on MSNBC right now, or ABC News, or CBS News, about the war in Israel and about the nation of Israel defending themselves from the murderous terrorist attacks of October 7th, trying to finally eradicate themselves of this despicable Hamas terror organization funded by the Iranians through American tax dollars that Joe Biden has let loose. I could play you those networks. But we're going to listen, thanks to the great people at Media Research Center, we're going to listen not just to CNN, but honestly probably the worst offender over at CNN. Again, because as Andrew Breitbart would put it, he pretends to be objective. He pretends to be the good guy over there. He pretends to tell it like it is and not have any political bias. Jake Tapper is the absolute worst example of media bias pretending not to be media bias. Oh, and by the way, as I give you that long laundry list of so-called journalists who work at these networks now, who used to work for Democrats, like Tim Russert and Chuck Todd and on and on. So did Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper worked for a Democrat congressman, too. So here's Jake Tapper, who's, again, trying to wring his hands in both sides of this and say, listen to how many times in this segment, and then when he brings on that lying sack, Leon Panetta, listen to how many times he uses this trick. He says, well, some would say.
Leading this hour, President Biden trying to lay down the law today with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Right there. Lay down the law? I reject the premise from the very beginning. Oh, so Joe Biden is going to lay down the law to Benjamin Netanyahu as if there's some sort of hierarchical relationship here, that it's Biden's job to lay down the law. By the way, lay down the law suggests that Benjamin Netanyahu is some way working outside of the law, and it needs to be laid down. Can you even imagine what goes on in Benjamin Netanyahu's mind as the likes of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Antony Blinken pick up the phone and try to tell him how to wage a war, when they try to tell him how to defend his nation, a man who has worn the uniform and fought the enemy in the sand and seen his own brother die at the hands of this enemy over the course of the last 50 years, the number of his countrymen that have died from this enemy, that he has had to protect his countrymen from on a daily basis from the most heinous, horrific attacks. And someone like Joe Biden is going to say, you know, you don't know what you're doing there waging this war. I better lay down the law. This is what an odious, odious man Joe Biden is, and the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu has to even pretend to tolerate this is an absolute abomination. Okay, so I'm sorry. I let Jake Tapper go for 5 seconds there. I'll let him go a little longer this time.
Biden making new demands, warning of consequences if Israeli forces do not take concrete steps to try to protect civilian lives in Gaza. The 30-minute call was the first kind.
I got a question here. Has Joe Biden picked up the phone and laid down the law to the leadership of Hamas at any time in the last 6 months, demanding that they go to any lengths to protect civilians in Gaza? Forget about the civilians in Israel that they slaughter at any given opportunity. Have you ever heard Joe Biden pick up the phone and lay down the law to Hamas leadership? I know he knows their number because we gave them tons of aid the second he became president. Aid that Donald Trump cut off because he knew it was going to fund terror activity. Why do we not hear Jake Tapper saying, well, Joe Biden laid down the law to the leadership of Hamas, telling them to take great pains to protect their own people, their own citizens? What has Hamas done to protect their citizens? No, that's Netanyahu's responsibility too.
Conversation between the leaders since Israel's strike Monday in Gaza that killed 7 aid workers from the World Central Kitchen, the nonprofit started by celebrity chef Jose Andres. The killings touching off a new level of frustration from the president with the way Israel is waging this campaign against Hamas.
Yeah, because Joe Biden knows how to fight a war. He knows the right way to defeat an enemy. Yeah, we'll get to the Jose Andres start later. I've got plenty set up for him. That sanctimonious, moral midget. Jake Tapper then turns to Leon Panetta. Now, Leon Panetta. CNN has welcomed Leon Panetta on here as an expert on the Middle East and the Israel-Hamas war, and to give his expert opinion on this. And why is Jake Tapper's first question not this? If I'm Jake Tapper and I've got Leon Panetta on my show, my first question is, Mr. Panetta, thank you for joining us. We're going to get to the Middle East in a moment, but you were one of the people who signed that letter that claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop was actually Russian disinformation. And you inspired news organizations as well as the federal government to censor the New York Post and other reporters from telling that story. Clearly that was a lie. Clearly that was false. So why should we believe a freaking word out of your mouth during this interview? Now, see, a real journalist would have asked that question, because Jake Tapper, you see, a real journalist would recognize that the only thing we know about Leon Panetta at this moment is that the last time we saw his ugly mug is when he was lying to the American people 2 weeks before a presidential election to protect his political party and the lying hack that ended up victorious at the end of the day. We all know that. So why are you bringing him on here as an expert and not grilling him on the lie we all know he said? And the only reason is because Jake Tapper doesn't care about the truth. Jake Tapper brought Leon Panetta on to continue a narrative in this segment that isolates Israel and in a very serious and sober fashion communicates the fact that, it brings us no joy to say this, but the problem in the Middle East is no longer Hamas. The problem is Israel. And you can trust us because we're very serious and we're very sober, and we're even going to furrow our brow as we say it. And it may have an impact if, in fact, we didn't know that Leon Panetta is not just a liar who helped meddle in the 2020 election by lying about the Hunter Biden story. But Jake Tapper knows that he's a liar and is just fine with it. But that's journalism in 2024 at CNN. And you'll hear more of this in just a moment. I'm Larry, in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Nowadays, $20 barely gets you a burger and fries, or maybe a quarter tank of gasoline. You know what it will get you, though? For just $20 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of 5G data from my cell phone company, Pure Talk. You'll get the same quality of service as AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, but for half the cost. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year, all with no contracts and no activation fees. You can trade your phone or get great deals on the latest iPhones and Androids. Make the switch today and save an additional 50% off your first month. Choose a wireless company that shares our values, that supports our military and veterans, that creates American jobs, and refuses to advertise on fake news networks. Instead, they're right here with us. Just go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and make the switch right now so you can actually afford that burger and fries. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Levin.
It's Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. By the way, you can not only download the podcast from my morning show in Washington, D.C. on WMAL, where I'm on every single morning, Monday through Friday. I also have a podcast through Town Hall. You might see it on YouTube, on Facebook, or whatever, Rumble. We do a 1-hour midday show. It's put out through my friends over at Town Hall, where I also work, and it's called Larry. So if you want 1 hour of me talking about the big events of the day in a nice little condensed podcast, you can find that wherever you like your podcast. It's just search for Larry Town Hall, and you'll find it. Or over at YouTube. Just go to Town Hall YouTube. You'll see it. We do it every day. It's got video as well if you're into that sort of thing. But I warn you, I do have a face for radio. Just saying. We're back to Jake Tapper, who put on this really more of a scripted drama on his CNN program. He played the part of a very serious and concerned journalist trying to get answers from a national security veteran, bipartisan Leon Panetta, who, again, last time he had his head up above water, he was lying to the American people about the Hunter Biden laptop story, saying that it was Russian disinformation, thus meddling in the 2020 presidential election. The man should not be invited onto any show ever again, other than to answer for his lies. But no, he's the guest. He's the expert. And we're going to get to what he had to say, what Jake Tapper had to say, and the way you are being gaslit by the media and how they are pretending to tell you the truth about what's going on in the Middle East and carrying water for Joe Biden. And I will also tell you what's really at the bottom of Joe Biden's recent turn here, this pivot this week against Israel. It's all politics, and you'll hear it next.
Nowadays, $20 barely gets you a burger and fries, or maybe a quarter tank of gasoline. You know what it will get you, though? For just $20 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of 5G data from my cell phone company, Pure Talk. You'll get the same quality of service as AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, but for half the cost. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year, all with no contracts and no activation fees. You can trade your phone or get great deals on the latest iPhones and Androids. Make the switch today and save an additional 50% off your first month. Choose a wireless company that shares our values, that supports our military and veterans, that creates American jobs, and refuses to advertise on fake news networks. Instead, they're right here with us. Just go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and make the switch right now so you can actually afford that burger and fries. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Levin.
Mark Levin, America's passionately cerebral voice. Talk with that voice now. 877-381-3811.
It's Larry O'Connor in my serene voice. Sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, 877-381-3811. You can still call in and talk with me, though. And if you want, I'll do my Mark Levin impersonation, but it's not good. And he'll probably, punch me when he sees me. I'm kidding. He's a lover, not a fighter. It's actually one of the sweetest, most gentle men you'll ever meet. I shouldn't say that. It's ruining his image. Coming up in the next hour, I'm done with this Jose Andres sainthood, the hagiography, the bowing. This chef who runs this world nonprofit that brings food to people, and now he's accusing Israel of deliberately targeting his vehicles in this accidental drone attack. This guy has always been a political hack. He is one of the most partisan, vociferous, left-wing activists who wraps himself in the cloak of charity. And there's some dirty little secrets at his little nonprofit that was making headlines about a year ago, and now they're nowhere to be seen. Now he's pure as the driven snow. But it was only a year ago when the scandals were breaking at this nonprofit of his. And we're going to reveal all those dirty little scandals about Jose Andres and the operation he runs that he doesn't want you to know about. Sounds a lot like a Harvey Weinstein operation over there. So we'll get to that in a bit. But right now, the other sanctimonious hack, Jake Tapper, on CNN today with Leon Panetta. And I want to thank Nicholas Fondacaro at Newsbusters Media Research Center for helping to collate all of this information here. Here's Jake, and he sets it up. And again, this is classic Jake Tapper. This is why he's the absolute worst. Because what he said, he sounds like in this question he's about to pose, he sounds like he's making the case why Israel is completely justified in waging the war against Hamas. But the way he presents the arguments, listen to the tone in his voice, listen to the scoffing attitude that he has and the disdain that he has for the arguments put forward, the legitimate arguments, like Hamas started the war. Hamas has killed innocent children. Hamas has raped. Hamas is still holding hostages to this day. And they've dedicated themselves to eradicating the earth of Jews, not just in Israel, but everywhere. I mean, that shouldn't be an equivocation. That shouldn't be, the other side will say this, but, what do you say? No. That should be the end of the conversation when you hear that about Hamas. Listen to how this is how Jake Tapper gets away with it. This is how he pretends like he's some sort of objective journalist. Listen.
You criticize how Israel is conducting this war, and you hear from supporters of Israel, as I do, Hamas is dedicated to the destruction of Israel. It's right in their charter. Hamas started this on October 7th.
They started it, I suppose.
Attack
you got to give them
on civilians and their kidnapping. Hamas could end this war today if they turned over the hostages.
You hear that from them,
which is traditionally what you do when you're losing. And Hamas doesn't care about the lives of the Palestinian people. I'm not disputing any of those claims. But what's your response when people say that, as if that means Israel can conduct the war any way it wants?
Well, first of all, who says that, what do you as if all of that means Israel can conduct the war however it wants? First of all, let me just be as gentle as I can when I say this. I have a hunch that if Israel really didn't care about civilian deaths, and if Israel really just wanted to wipe Gaza off the map, I have a hunch, this whole Israel can wage the war however it wants. I have a hunch that if that was really their goal, I think they would have done it by now. I actually have a hunch that they have the firepower and the capability to do just that. And they have it, but this narrative has been set up that they're just reckless. They're out there. It's just carpet bombing. It's just they don't care about any life. Let me ask you something. Quick question. I mean, again, we'll get into this a little later. But if they really didn't care about the lives of the people living in Gaza right now, of the innocent people, the people who are not taking up arms, then why in the hell was Jose Andres's little humanitarian aid workers, why were they even in there? Let me if Israel didn't want to let them in, they wouldn't have let them in. Why did even Israel let international aid organizations in there, if they're so bloodthirsty, if they're so cutthroat, if they're such a murderous regime that has no regard for human life, then why are they even letting these do-gooders in there to feed people? All right, so you heard how Tapper completely duplicitously set this up. Now here's the lying Leon Panetta.
Well, I think that's the answer. It doesn't give them a license to not pay attention to humanitarian needs, not pay attention to not misfiring on innocent aid workers. It doesn't give them a license to basically not pay attention to the larger issue here, which is, are you going to get a ceasefire? Are you going to be able to get your hostages exchanged? And are you going to be able to establish real lines of communication for humanitarian aid?
You evil lying hack. I don't call people evil very often. But on a moral issue that is so cut and dry and so obvious, and you say something like that, Hamas just rejected the latest offer for a ceasefire. It's Hamas. Do you hear people complaining about Hamas for rejecting the latest ceasefire offer? Do you? Do you hear that? And what was the mangled language? It doesn't give you a right to not misfire. What does this even mean?
To not pay attention to humanitarian needs, not pay attention to not misfiring on innocent aid workers.
So in other words, not misfiring means they deliberately fired on international aid workers. If they don't care about humanitarian aid, why did they let aid workers in the first place, Leon Panetta? Hey, Jake Tapper, you vaunted award-winning journalist. Where's the interruption and the challenge here? Are you saying that they fired deliberately? Are you saying they don't care? And, of course, he's not challenged on any of these assertions, and they're all lies. They're all complete and total lies from Leon Panetta. And this misfiring, I'm sorry, the last major historic misfire that I'm aware of happened after the terror attacks against our 13 service members in Afghanistan due to Joe Biden's incompetence as we withdrew from that nation, and our service members were murdered. And because Joe Biden needed a better news cycle, he authorized a drone attack on an innocent family. I believe they were on their way to a wedding. They were all erroneously murdered from a drone attack. And Joe Biden never apologized for it. In fact, he went to the beach in Delaware that weekend and let someone from the Pentagon clean up the mess. Nobody got fired at the Pentagon for killing that innocent Afghanistan family. We shrug and walk away. And by the way, these are the casualties of war. These things do happen. But we don't have to apologize for it. But Israel, not only have they apologized for it, not only has Israel fired somebody from the IDF, but no, hell no, that's not enough. Now, because of this incident, Joe Biden, through his Anthony Blinken, is comparing Israel to Hamas. They're indistinguishable, he said. The most despicable, grotesque characterization of our ally, who, again, along with Americans, still have our people and their people held hostage by these sex-crazed terrorists who are assaulting them sexually on a regular basis. All right, more Leon Panetta, as if that's not enough.
I really thought that this war would move a lot faster than it did.
I'm sorry, Mr. Panetta. How quickly did your wars take? You know, all your successful excursions in Iraq and in Afghanistan, were those lickety-split? Excuse me, Leon Panetta, how long exactly is it supposed to take? Please, tell me your timeline here. Expert. When was the last time you had to eradicate a region of a terrorist organization that's right on your doorstep, that has been firing rockets into your civilian population for years, and just murdered 1,000 of your countrymen as they were attending a music festival? I'm sorry, do you have experience with this? Did you get it taken care of in a month? I'm sorry. Please, lend me your expertise, Leon.
And what we've seen now is, almost 33,000 lives of innocent Palestinians that have been lost.
You liar. You liar. And again, where's Jake Tapper? Excuse me, Mr. Panetta, where'd that number come from, 33,000? Where is that number from? Although CNN repeats that number all the time, too. You know where that number comes from? Comes from the Gaza Health Ministry. Do you know who the Gaza Health Ministry is? Who do they work by? That's Hamas. The Gaza Health Ministry is Hamas. They put out the number 33,000. I found CNN referring to this number in one of their articles. And you'll love this. It says, as you scroll down in the article, about the 33,000 casualty number. It's way deep into the article, of course. CNN cannot independently verify the casualty totals in Gaza or the Israeli estimates of Hamas fighters killed. So CNN cannot independently verify the number that is given to them from the propaganda wing of the Hamas Health Ministry. But they go ahead and repeat it all day long on their network, and they allow their guest, under the guise of expertise, lying Leon Panetta, to repeat the number. They know for a fact that they can't independently verify it. Oh, and when you ask the Hamas Health Ministry, Gaza Health Ministry, which is Hamas, when you ask them, you're saying it's 33,000, how many of that is civilians? How many of that is military, the fighters? Guess what they'll say? Oh, it's all civilians. All civilians. Oh, okay. Well, can you give us the number of the fighters who have been killed in the conflict? Oh, no. Every casualty is a civilian. Oh, well, what about the people who took up arms and, are like fighting in the streets and are actually attempting to murder as many Jews as they can find anytime, anybody? Oh, they're just civilians. They're just civilians. They don't distinguish. And so we're supposed to take this number seriously. And we're supposed to let that number be parroted on CNN without any challenge. And by the way, for those of you who, again, thank you, Nicholas Fondacaro. He does great work at Media Research Center. He was like, well, that's just the guess, as Leon Panetta said that. But Jake Tapper, here's Jake Tapper. Remember that hospital? We were told Israel bombed a hospital and killed all of the patients in there, and that's not what happened at all. First of all, the hospital didn't get hit. The parking lot got hit by a rocket, and the rocket came from Hamas. But that night, there was Anderson Cooper with his sleeves rolled up, looking very serious and earnest, reporting on it from Tel Aviv. Here was that report, October 17th, and you'll hear Jake Tapper jump in here.
More remains to be seen, some sort of an explosion at this hospital. According, the death toll is high, hundreds killed, according to Hamas officials on the ground. What we have seen, certainly in the past, is either an Israeli strike or an accidental strike, intentional or accidental, or a Hamas rocket launch that then falls short and lands, killing civilians, which we have also seen in past conflicts. So at this point, it is still very early. We're trying to gain more information on the ground, Jake.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is always a very difficult situation because right now we have reports of hundreds killed, and there's no reason to doubt that, but we don't know.
There's no reason to... really? There might be reason to doubt that, Jake. I mean, reports of hundreds killed. Who gave you those reports? Can you tell us where you got those reports? Oh, well, Hamas told us that. Oh, and there's no reason to doubt that? I could think of a reason to doubt that. That's who Jake Tapper is. And this is the kind of coverage that is leading the way right now. This is what they're watching, or if not engineering, from the Biden White House. And this is why you saw this week Anthony Blinken literally saying that Israel runs the risk of being indistinguishable from Hamas, one of the most despicable, atrocious blood libels of my lifetime. So what's this all about? What's this all about? Why are we seeing this happen this week? Is it because of this Jose Andres and the aid workers? Is that it? That was the red line. That was the final straw. That was it. This is where we get serious. No, not exactly. Not exactly. The reason that we're seeing Biden shift this way, it's been heading in this direction. The last time he made this pivot and began this pivot was after the Michigan primary. You'll remember there were tens of thousands of votes withheld in the Dearborn, Michigan area, overwhelmingly an Arab and Palestinian population. Their Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib, is really the representative not of her district in Michigan. She's a representative of Gaza. And now something happened this week. Something happened in Wisconsin on Tuesday. And it was the final straw. It wasn't the aid workers. It wasn't Jose Andres. It wasn't a drone attack. It was the Democrat primary in Wisconsin, and I'll tell you all about it coming up in just a moment.
Mark Levin.
Nowadays, $20 barely gets you a burger and fries and maybe a quarter tank of gasoline. You know what it will get you, though? For just $20 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of 5G data from my cell phone company, Pure Talk. You'll get the same quality of service as AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, but for half the cost. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year, all with no contracts and no activation fees. You can trade your phone or get great deals on the latest iPhones and Androids. Make the switch today and save an additional 50% off your first month. Choose a wireless company that shares our values, that supports our military and veterans, that creates American jobs, and refuses to advertise on fake news networks. Instead, they're right here with us. Just go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and make the switch right now so you can actually afford that burger and fries. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Levin.
In 2020, during the presidential election, the state of Wisconsin, who in 2016 had voted for Donald Trump, a Republican, for the first time in many, many, many years, when the final vote was ratified and certified, Joe Biden was on top, 1,630,000 votes, to Donald Trump's 1,610,000 votes. That was a difference of about half a percentage point. It was 20,000 votes. I bet you did that math in your head. 20,000 votes. The final count in Wisconsin, despite all the irregularities with the drop boxes and the mail-in ballots and ballots that didn't have verified signatures and all of that, all the nonsense that was unnecessary. Joe Biden was on top on the final count in 2020 by 20,000 votes. Now, this week, Wisconsin had their presidential primary. And in the Democrat primary, it was over. You know, he's already the declared nominee. Nobody cared. And there was no one really running against him because, you know, the Democratic Party, they don't really like democracy very much. So they locked up the primary. They didn't even want anyone to vote. There were no other candidates. It was just Joe Biden. So it doesn't really matter, right? But in a race that didn't matter and that was uncontested, this last Tuesday, 40,000 Wisconsin Democrats voted for undeclared. They voted for anybody but Joe Biden. They voted for none of the above. They went out of their way to send a message to Joe Biden that they were not with him. 40,000 Democrats in Wisconsin. I tell you again, in 2020, he was up by 20,000 when they ratified the ballot. The man is terrified. The party is terrified. They are accommodating their radical left-wing anti-Israel base, and that's what this all is about. He is reversing decades of support of Israel to save his own pathetic political hide.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin. 877-381-3811. Real honor, as always, to get the call to fill in for Mark Levin. He's the greatest. He's the best. And it's humbling to be able to sit behind his microphone, even for just this one little program this Friday in the United States of America. Glad to be heard coast to coast and around the world, whether you're listening on radio or on the streaming devices. Thanks for doing that. If you want to get your Mark Levin fix this weekend, I've got good news for you. Saturday, Fox News, 8 p.m., Life, Liberty, and Levin. The great one will welcome Stanley Kurtz and John Spencer to the set. And then on Sunday, 8 p.m., Fox News Channel, Life, Liberty, and Levin will have Pete Hegseth and Brent Bozell. Make sure you watch it or make sure you record it on your DVR or catch it streaming later. Also, by the way, speaking of streaming, you can listen to my radio show. I do the morning show on WMAL in Washington, D.C., which is Mark's station in the nation's capital, every single morning, 5 to 9 in the morning. You can hear me Eastern time, or you can and stream it wherever you live, or you can, of course, download those podcasts. I also do a daily 1-hour streaming show through my friends at Town Hall, all the Town Hall sites, Town Hall, Hot Air, PJ Media, Red State, Twitchy, and Bearing Arms, or at the Town Hall social media locations, Facebook, YouTube, what have you. It's a 1-hour show. If you want the audio version, you can get that podcast as well wherever you get your podcasts. And I appreciate it. Just search for Town Hall Larry, because the name of the show is, well, it's Larry, because my name is, well, it's Larry. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We've been talking about this despicable pivot. Yes, Joe Biden has thrown Israel under the bus, dared to lecture Benjamin Netanyahu on how to wage a war. Joe Biden, a man who's been wrong on every single foreign policy issue his entire lamentable career, and never once even come close to knowing how to fight a war, wage a war, or win a war. Benjamin Netanyahu, I'm sorry. Choose your fighter, guys. You're going to war. Who do you want to lead the troops? You want Joe Mashed Potato Brains Biden? Or do you want Benjamin Netanyahu, an actual warrior who is defending his nation and defending the people of his nation against an existential threat that Joe Biden is empowering and enriching? You tell me. You pick your warrior. But, you know, I didn't think that this year's presidential election would be about who's best equipped to support the nation of Israel, because there was a time when this was not really a partisan question. But add this to the list of radical changes that the Democrats have undertaken in a very short time in this country. The things that Joe Biden stands for right now, Bill Clinton wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole when he was running in 1996. And now suddenly here we are. And it's more important than ever that we keep our head down. They're calling us every name in the book. They're throwing everything they can at us. And right now, somehow, after all of that, our party's nominee, Donald Trump, is ahead nationally by several points. But, of course, you're smart enough to know national polls are absolutely meaningless, because that's not how we elect a president. But in state polls, especially in those battleground states that matter the most, Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and North Carolina and Wisconsin, did I already say Wisconsin? Donald Trump is winning in all of them. And in contrast, in 2020, he was never winning in all of them. He was lucky to have been tied. And I think, honestly, these polls always undercount Republicans in general, and especially Donald Trump. So given the fact that we're 7 months away from the election and we're in this position right now, after everything they've thrown at us, it's encouraging. But we just got to keep our head down, know that we're not alone, know that we're in this together, and we got to keep fighting for this country. That's all we've got. It's all we've got. And add to the mix all the things that we have to fight for: the national security issues, the woeful state of our military, our border and border security, and our immigration dilemmas, the crime and mayhem and violence in our streets, our economy, the price of gas, the inflation. Add to all of that now the existential threat to Israel, and whether we are going to stand by our ally. And even set aside the obvious moral question of Israel, where it's clear who's on the right side in this issue. But just from a pure geopolitical, diplomatic, national security posture, who in the hell are we going to ally with in the Middle East? Last I checked, Middle East kind of an important part of the world. And we've got one functioning, legitimate democracy that cares about human rights and freedoms. And they just so happen to be an ally of ours since its inception, and we have, for the most part, never wavered in that support until, I don't know, about a week and a half ago, when this pathetic, desiccated shell of a president recognized that he was going to lose. Oh, Larry, would he throw Israel under the bus just to win an election? Oh, come on. What do you think? So we just keep focusing on this election coming up. It is incredibly important. And we're going to stick together. And we've got talk radio, and we've got our websites, and we've got our podcasts, and we've got our streaming shows, and we're going to keep talking with each other. And we're going to keep each other strong through all of this, because we got to stay together on this. Enough with the stupid, petty infighting over nonsense. This is it. It doesn't get more important than this. 877-381-3811. In a minute, I'm gonna absolutely pull no punches on this sanctimonious jerk, Jose Andres, this celebrity chef who thinks he's Mother Teresa and Oprah all wrapped up into one. But I do want to take some of your calls since so many of you have been waiting. How about, is it Zenin in Illinois? Zenin, thanks for calling in. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Hello, Larry. Is this the biggest night of your life?
Pretty much. I mean, my wedding night was pretty big too. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. So,
and my daughter graduating college was kind of a big deal too from UCLA.
Obviously.
That was. Oh, and my other daughter graduating from the Naval Academy and getting sworn in as an officer in the Navy. That's a pretty big deal too. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then my sons. Actually, I got two sons, and I'm sorry, I'm going off track. It's a big night, though. Don't get me wrong. It's a big night. Go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, I was calling because I know this was like a week and a half ago, and I tried calling in a couple times, but usually the lines are all tied up. So Joe Biden, because he can barely talk, I mean, listening to him, it's not good. But so he needs some help from Obama and Clinton.
Right. He had his big fundraiser at Radio City, the three of them. Plus, let's not forget Lizzo romping around on the stage. You know, it would be mean of me to suggest that today's earthquakes in the greater New York area had something to do with Lizzo rehearsing for her next Biden fundraiser. That would be wrong, so I would not say such a thing. But yes, it was a big deal, and they raised, what, $25 million, right?
26.
What's $1 million among friends?
Yeah, and so I know Trump could do, I don't know if he would even do such an event, and he could do an event with one hand tied behind his back, and I don't know if it would help with voters. But do you think George W. Bush would do a similar event with Donald Trump? I mean, I don't know if he's too busy painting. I mean, I've seen his paintings. His paintings are better than Hunter Biden.
Well, I don't know, Zen. You know, it's an interesting question, and thank you for the call. Let me first tell you, I'll address the George Bush question in a second, but I will tell you this. You're right that Donald Trump can do this with one hand tied behind his back. In fact, it's exactly what he's doing tomorrow. I've got really good news for you, Zen. If you're concerned that Joe Biden with Obama and Clinton at Radio City Music Hall was able last week to raise $26 million, well, you'll be happy to hear that tomorrow night in Mar-a-Lago, the Trump campaign will be having a fundraiser, and they announced today that they have secured commitments totaling $50 million for that event, literally doubling what Biden was able to do up at Radio City Music Hall. So, yes, he is able to do it, and he is, in fact, doing it tomorrow night. You'll see the stories breaking this evening and tomorrow. And on George W. Bush, you know, I don't know. I will tell you this. Just last week, George W. Bush, former President George W. Bush, was unequivocal in his support for Israel and his condemnation of Hamas. He rarely makes public political statements. He has, for the most part, done what former presidents often will do, which is sort of, you know, retire and stay out of things. Because what's the point? You got no power. You're never going to have any more power. So just be a president emeritus. There have been times when he says things, but mostly on local political things, not policy things. He does not like Donald Trump. He doesn't like Donald Trump because Donald Trump has said things about him, about his brother, and about his father because he's Donald Trump, and that's what he does. Some people can transcend that. Senator Ted Cruz was Donald Trump's most important ally in the Senate during Trump's 4-year presidency, and this is after Donald Trump suggested that Ted Cruz's father was part of the Kennedy assassination. So if Ted Cruz can overlook that, I would think that maybe W could do the same. I think that his hurt feelings over the Bush name will not allow him to sort of suck it up and do a fundraiser for Donald Trump. But it's a funny thing, this Israel issue. How it's clarifying. I've seen a lot of friends of mine who were never Trump and pro-Israel who are putting the pieces together and realizing exactly what's going on here. And I've been very, very encouraged to see some of the things that they have said on social media about Donald Trump. So let's just hold that thought and let's see what happens with former President Bush. We shall see. But yes, a $50 million fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach tomorrow on behalf of Trump, his super PAC, and the RNC. And I doubt, something tells me that won't get the same headlines and glowing coverage that Lizzo in her thong jumping up and down on stage at Radio City Music Hall along with Stephen Colbert, Obama, and Bill Clinton will get. But you know what? In the end of the day, the coverage and the write-ups and the glowing entertainment magazine shows breathless coverage of your big ritzy event doesn't really mean a whole lot. At the end of the day, when you're doing a fundraiser, it's the funding that's important. By the way, let's not forget also, while Joe Biden was doing that in Manhattan and clogging up traffic and raising money for his political campaign, at the exact same time, Donald Trump was about, 20 miles away on Long Island, visiting the home of the widow of that fallen police officer. That happened at the exact same time. Like I said before, pick your fighter, choose your warrior, and then keep your head down and get ready for all the flack you're going to be feeling. But we've been through it before, and we're going to get through it together. All right, coming up, speaking of flack, Jose Andres, you better watch out. I'm coming for him. I'm sick of the hagiographies. I'm sick of everybody having to wring their hands about, oh, well, I disagree with Jose Andres. He's a great guy, and his organization is so wonderful. Don't get me wrong. He's just really misguided, and I disagree with him. Respectfully, oh, I don't want to be on the wrong side of Jose Andres. Oh, God forbid I'm on the wrong side of... No. I'm about to jump with both feet on the wrong side of Jose Andres, and I'm proud to do it. I'll tell you everything you need to know about this lying, hypocritical, sanctimonious jerk and the dirty little secrets in his sanctified organization that they've been trying to keep in the closet. We'll tell you all about it next. I'm Larry O'Connor, in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
I'm told that the straw that broke the camel back, the reason that Joe Biden is now demanding that Netanyahu and Israel stand down and end this war in Gaza is because of the death of 7 aid workers that worked with Jose Andres Aid Organization, the World Kitchen, right? It's the World Central Kitchen. Since 2010, they've been providing aid for hurricanes and earthquakes and all of these natural calamities, which is very noble on the face of it. Very noble. And then suddenly, recently, he's been utilizing the World Central Kitchen for different kinds of disasters. Like suddenly now he's in Ukraine, in a war zone, and now in Gaza, in a war zone. And a couple of other very politically charged locations. Not hurricanes, not earthquakes, but politically charged locations all around the world and right here in America, and taking political stands as he just merely feeds the hungry. That's all he's doing, is feeding the hungry. And after this attack, he gave this video message.
7 team members between the specialty security people we have, 3 British individuals and 3 international crew plus 1 Palestinian, that they were targeted systematically, car by car. And this happened over more than 1.5, 1.8 kilometers. So this was not just a bad luck situation where, we dropped the bomb in the wrong place or no, this was over 1.5, 1.8 kilometers with a very defined humanitarian convoy that had signs in the top, in the roof, a very colorful logo that we are obviously very proud of, but that's very clear who we are and what we do. But what I know is that we were targeted deliberately, non-stop, until everybody was dead in this convoy. That cannot be the role of an army. That cannot be the role of an army that has hundreds of drones above Gaza in any single moment. Humanitarians and civilians should never be paying the consequences of war. This is a basic principle of humanity. At the time, this looks like it's not a war against terrorism anymore. Seems this is a war against humanity itself.
This is a war against humanity itself. I'd love to play the stirring message that he sent after the October 7th attacks about how Hamas was waging a war against humanity. But he didn't have anything to say at that time. Well, we're going to tell you exactly what you need to know about Jose Andres and his dirty little secrets at the World Central Kitchen and the sexual scandals there in just a moment.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Jose Andres, this celebrity chef who figured out how to sell an empanada for $50 and make a fortune, is now up for a Nobel Prize. He wants to win a Nobel Prize. He wants to get sainthood. He thinks he's Mother Teresa. He thinks he's Oprah. And he's a Democrat activist. You know, Jose Andres was supposed to have the restaurant in the Trump Hotel. He signed a contract to provide a restaurant in the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C. before Trump ran for president. Then once he ran for president, he reneged on his contract. He pulled out of it. He got sued. He lost. Celebrity chef David Burke ended up putting the great chef, great restaurant. It was wonderful. Now Trump sold it. The place is terrible. Never go there. But Jose Andres is a Democrat, liberal, Marxist activist, and he pretends to be a saint. He pretends to be, he's for the people. He just wants to feed people. He set up this World Central Kitchen. The World Central Kitchen a year ago, it's getting great headlines. Oh, it's just this sainted organization. It's like it might as well be a Mother Teresa's convent in India. The World Central Kitchen a year ago was dealing with different headlines, because the person in charge of emergency relief efforts for the World Central Kitchen had to be fired because he was forcing women to have sex with him against their will. There's a word for that. Forcing someone to have sex with them against their will while traveling around the world in hotel rooms far away from home. There's a word for that. It's sexual assault. It's rape. The person that Jose Andres had and employed at his sainted World Central Kitchen was fired. Tim Kilcoyne lost his job as director of emergency relief in June of 2022 following an investigation into misconduct, according to the group's co-founder Rob Wilder. This is a write-up from Axios based on an investigation from Bloomberg. Misconduct allegations included pressuring women into sleeping in his hotel room and having sex with him. 10 current and former employees, volunteers, and contractors, including 5 who say they were directly harassed. In addition, last year, the CEO, Nate Mook, departed after Kilcoyne, a sudden exit that was announced in only a short statement, remarkable for its, quote, opaque tone. You think CEO Nate Mook may have been involved in this and knew full well what was going on? Jose Andres wished Mook well on Twitter, by the way. The guy who was enabling the rapist, allegedly, this guy who was accused of rape. Well, let me be clear. Women said that they were forced to have sex with him. There were no criminal charges, so I suppose that that's critically important here. But this guy, Mr. Mook, Nate Mook, the CEO, who also got fired, and one assumes either knew about it or, let's say, should have known about it, since the organization's been around for, 20 years. It took them 10 years to hire an HR person, by the way. They've got hundreds of millions of dollars in this boondoggle of a place. And all the headlines up until just, a year ago were all about this scandal. It's like Harvey Weinstein's running the place. I mean, Jose Andres, he is a celebrity chef. He knows all these Hollywood people, so this is what goes along in this area. Jose Andres wished Mook well. The CEO, when he departed, he said, Mook changed our lives, the lives of many. Yeah, he sure changed all those women's lives who were sexually harassed, or worse. We'll miss you at World Central Kitchen. Cannot wait to see what you do next. Gracias, amigo. Mook said he was disappointed with the characterization of his departure. The characterization, by the way, from the board of directors said they were first made aware of Kilcoyne's misconduct during final stages of the investigation and a subsequent termination. He said they were deeply concerned and alarmed with the findings and that this behavior happened within WCK. Did they call the police? Was there a criminal investigation? Did anyone look to press charges? Or is that part of the cover-up here? According to Mr. Mook, he said, I proactively ordered an investigation into Tim Kilcoyne, immediately fired him upon conclusion of the investigation, which is the first time I learned of the allegations of sexual harassment. Well, I don't know. Last I checked, when a CEO is in charge of a corporation that doesn't have proper mechanics in place so that employees can complain about this thing without fear of repercussion, that ultimately goes back to the CEO, doesn't it? I take reports of sexual harassment very seriously, worked hard to create a safe working space. Well, the board of directors didn't think so. So he gets hundreds of millions of dollars in aid from the likes of Jeff Bezos and all of these celebrities. He trots around the world, and again, it was always hurricanes. It was always, earthquakes. It was always these natural disasters. Suddenly he's in Ukraine. Suddenly he's in Gaza. And he's claiming that Israel deliberately targeted his vehicles in this video. A claim that he has absolutely no evidence for. He wasn't there. I want to read, Matt Continetti had a very good column today at the Free Beacon about this. He says, the accidental IDF killing of 7 employees, World Central Kitchen, celebrity chef Jose Andres' charitable organization has pushed Biden further away from America's ally, Israel. The response has been outrage, disgust, and insinuation. Biden has joined in the chorus. He's fallen for the myth that Israel wants Palestinians to starve. Chef Andres told Reuters that his associates were targeted systematically car by car. He has no evidence for this. He wrote in the New York Times that what happened was a direct attack on clearly marked vehicles whose movements were known by the Israeli Defense Forces. A direct attack? Where is his proof? He has no proof. You cannot win this war, Andres wrote, by starving an entire population. The accusation is grotesque and stupid. If starving an entire population were Israel's policy, what was World Central Kitchen doing in Gaza in the first place? Thank you. Thank you. That's what I've been saying. Trust me, if Israel wanted to do away with these people and not give them any humanitarian aid and treat them as the monsters that Biden and Blinken tell us they are, trust me, they would be acting much more monstrously. Chef Andres' rush to judgment has an underlying goal. Quote, the U.S. must do more to tell Prime Minister Netanyahu this war needs to end now, he told Reuters. The people of Israel need to remember at this darkest hour what strength truly looks like, he wrote in the Times. Who does this guy think he is? Writes Matt Continetti. Calling for a unilateral ceasefire, lecturing Israelis on the nature of strength. He's not the Pope. He thinks he's the Pope. He thinks he's better than the Pope. He thinks he's Jesus Christ. It's grotesque and it's disgusting what this man has done. And trust me, his closet is not clean after you hear what went on at the World Central Kitchen. It's amazing how those headlines are all gone now. No one hears about it. No one hears about it at all. Oh, but he's just a humanitarian. He deserves the Nobel Prize. He's not political. Oh, he's not political? He's not political, huh? All right, so I told you he's now showing up in Gaza. He's showing up in Ukraine, right? after telling the world that he's just there to feed starving people who are victims of natural disasters, and now he's actually in the middle of war zones feeding people. But in 2019, in Washington, D.C., Jose Andres set up a special kitchen to feed the poor and starving people in Washington, a very specific kind of person. Federal workers. You see, in January of 2019, we had just entered the third week of a so-called government shutdown. It was a standoff between President Trump and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer because the omnibus spending package that made its way to Trump's desk did not include funding for a border wall. And Trump said, not just no, but hell no. I'm not going to sign this unless you fund the wall that the American people demand. And so we had a government shutdown. And Jose Andres then starts to grandstand. He gets in front of cameras. And, he's not political. He just wants to feed starving people. So who does he decide he wants to feed so that the world can see and he can get all of his attention? He sets up a kitchen to feed furloughed federal workers in Washington. Now, you know as well as I do when there's a federal government shutdown, it's not a government shutdown. And when you know that when employees are furloughed from the federal government, they get paid. This lasted 4 weeks. They got paid immediately, and all the money was held from them. They got all their back pay without having to work. And also, it was, 1/4 of the federal government in Washington, D.C. But, they were starving, you see. They were starving. And then Jose Andres, the sainted Jose Andres, the combination of Mother Teresa and Oprah and the Pope. He put out this video on social media. He's not political or anything, but listen to what he says here.
We're opening a kitchen at the Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C., right on Pennsylvania Avenue between the Capitol, Congress, and the White House. This has a double meaning. We're going to be open for any federal family that needs food. We will have food for you to eat or food for you to take home. But also I hope it'll be a call to action to our senators and congressmen, and especially President Trump, to make sure that we end this moment in the history of America where families are about to go hungry.
And families were not going hungry. I hate to break it to you, Chef Andres, but here in this country, we actually do have programs to help you. And there are plenty of churches and community groups that help feed the hungry if they are in fact hungry. We have billions and billions of dollars in aid that go to people if they can't feed themselves. In fact, I bet you take those cards in your very overpriced restaurants. This was all a political theatric. But did you hear that? I want Congress, the senators, and what now?
It's a double meaning. We're going to be open for any federal family that needs food. We will have food for you to eat or food for you to take home. But also I hope it'll be a call to action to our senators and congressmen, and especially President Trump.
Why especially President Trump? Mr. I don't take political sides. Oh, I'm just a humanitarian. I'm just a saint. I just want to feed people. What do you mean it's a call to action? Who the hell are you to make a call to action? And why especially Donald Trump? Why? You know why. We all know why. Because he's not nonpartisan. He's not a humanitarian. He does take political sides, and it's always one side. He's a hack. He's an activist. He's a radical. And now he is using the deaths of these volunteers for his organization to do the exact same thing, calling him Benjamin Netanyahu. Where was he demanding that the leadership of Hamas stand down and surrender? And, hey, by the way, pal, release the hostages that you're still holding and assaulting. That doesn't motivate him to make a statement. That doesn't motivate him to talk to Reuters and CBS News about who's really to blame. No. He called on Benjamin Netanyahu to end this because it's all his fault. No, I'm sorry. Enough of the sainthood. Enough of the special treatment. Even my friends on the right, I've got plenty of commentators that are friends of mine that I've seen over the last couple of days, and they're terrified of this guy. Let me just say the World Central Kitchen does great work. They do wonderful humanitarian work, and I'm not criticizing that organization, and I'm not even criticizing Jose Andres. I just think that he's very wrong about this, and he should just, he should focus on what he does best, and God knows he does do best. He's doing the Lord's work. No, he's not. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to stand up there and act like you're pristine and perfect and that you're free from any criticism when just a year ago, women who worked for your organization were being sexually assaulted by one of your employees. And you all turned a blind eye to it, and you had no mechanisms in place for employees to complain about that kind of behavior. And I'm just reading the headlines, and I'm reading the news articles about how you had to fire this guy, and then you fired the CEO. And said, we're going to change things now. Now we're going to change things. After women were forced to sleep in this guy's hotel room and have sex with him. You're not allowed to get a free pass. You're not allowed to be the victim now. You're in this. You're an activist. You've chosen sides. And we know what side you're on. And I'm sorry. You no longer get this grace. You no longer get this great treatment, this wonderful, what a great job you do. You really do deserve the Nobel Prize. No. You deserve a full-on investigation. Mind your business. Cook your food. You want to feed the hungry, feed the starving, go for it. You go into a war zone that's run by terrorists, where they don't follow the Geneva Conventions, this is what happens. Why don't you blame the people, your hosts, who hide their military in schools and hospitals and hide behind women and children and violate every single principle of the Geneva Conventions of warfare? Why don't you maybe have something to say about them before you attack the only free, democratic country in the entire region? Sorry, Jose. Hate to tarnish your halo. I'm Larry O'Connor. This is the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin. I want to remind you, I do a radio show in Washington, D.C. on WMAL, the morning show, called O'Connor and Company. Company is my co-hosts, Julie Gunlock and Patrice Onwuka from Independent Women's Forum. And also, once in a while, every week or so, every Thursday, we got Mercedes Schlapp. You know her from CPAC, of course, and formerly from the Trump administration. We have a good time. You can listen to that live streaming wherever you listen to radio shows, or you can download the podcast wherever you get podcasts. I also do a daily podcast, a 1-hour show, just me. It's called Larry at Town Hall. You can get it at the Town Hall sites or wherever you get your podcasts. So listen to that, please. Two quick more notes about this real fast. I mentioned the Geneva Conventions. You know, I'm really sick and tired of hearing politicians here in America, here in their cushy little offices or television studios of Washington, D.C., telling me about how Israel is violating the rules of warfare here with this disproportionate warfare. And this is we do have rules in warfare. The civilized nations of the world agree to the Geneva Conventions about warfare. They're pretty simple, basic rules. Amongst them are the armed combatants must be wearing distinguishable uniforms. Hamas never does that. The combatants should not hide and encamp and fortify themselves within civilian areas, especially around women and children. Hamas violates that they violate it right now, every single moment of the day. You should also not specifically deliberately target innocent civilians. And that's, exactly what Hamas does every single time. They only target innocent civilians. That's what October 7th was. Yeah, they're right. This war violates all the rules of modern world warfare. But it's Hamas every single day at every single moment, and they can end it all today. And I would love to hear American leadership say that. I would love to hear our Secretary of State say that, our president. You know what? I wish we had a president. Thanks for listening. Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin.